Oh, I'm so excited to share something with you pertaining Elijah. Have you ever wondered about why two prophets shared the same spirit of Elijah? What is it with the spirit of Elijah? We know that Elijah pointed to the Messiah. And Elijah, actually, in his own lifetime, there were shown two comings of an Elijah spirited one. This video is very deep. It's going to tie with Revelations 11's two witnesses, Elijah and the woman of songs. It's mind-blowing. We're going to look at questions like, why were there two prophets in the days of old with Elijah's spirit? Why was there a double portion of Elijah's spirit on the latter one? Does this tie with the two witnesses of Revelations 11? Does this tie with the two comings of Jesus? And how? Why? Does it tie with John and the two witnesses that points to Jesus? And does it tie with songs? And why did Elisha do such a strange thing to ask for a double portion of Elijah's spirit when it was already so strong? All of that is prophecy. And remember that in order for Elisha to receive the double portion, there was a prerequisite. He had to see the ascent of Elijah. Hidden in the ascent of Elijah is prophecy that will blow your mind and answer these questions. But only if God opens your eyes. And this is very deep prophecy. It's something that I don't know until God helped me to understand it. But because it is so deep and so dense, it takes you to Genesis, to Revelations 11, to Song of Solomon, to the Ascent, to the burning bush. It takes you to so many places. It becomes too lengthy to share. If I upload it as one, it's going to be more than an hour. So I'm going to do so in terms of 3, but it's actually one video that I'm going to cut into 3 parts. If you want to watch the full, which I recommend because it's one revelation, there's going to be a playlist, and this is the first. So in this video, we're going to look at the tie between the two Elijah spirited ones that we see in Elijah's day and John and Revelations 11, and the two comings that both point to the Messiah and why it is so. We're going to speak about the ascent. It's a prerequisite for that mantle that came on Elisha. Remember the mantle that came on Elisha with a double portion of Elijah's spirit? Why it was a double portion that's associated with it? Why Elisha even asked for a double portion? Because it's all prophecy. He needed to ask that. It was always a strange thing to me. Why ask for something like that? Because Elijah's spirit is already so powerful. Why 2? There's a reason. It's all prophecy. And God has opened it. So we're going to go there. And then at the end of this video, we will move to the Elijah testimony. And you will hear a secret taking you to Genesis, the crucifixion, the burning bush. And if God opens your eyes, you will see how the Elijah testifies the identity of Messiah and the relationship that he has with God himself. Let's go there. First, consider this. Jesus, he came the first time, and we know that he's returning. So we are looking at 2 comings. The first time that he came, the Elijah spirited one, which was John the Baptist, identified Jesus to be the Messiah. Elijah thus points to the Messiah, and there is a Elijah testimony that you cannot miss, and we're going to speak about that shortly. But Elijah points and identifies the Messiah. John had that spirit, and he identified the Messiah. And we know that Jesus is returning. And in Revelations 11, we read of 2 with very strange descriptions regarding them, because it's 2, but then at times the singular form is used when speaking about them. In Revelations 11, it is said that they witnessed Jesus. And it happens before he returns. They are also associated with Elijah because of things that they are able to do that reminds of Elijah. Interesting. is that actually in Elijah's lifetime, the two comings of Elijah was already shown in literal events that happened in his life. Elijah, literal Elijah, had the spirit of Elijah, and then another prophet came after him who also had the same spirit. Thus the spirit of Elijah returned in Elisha, one person having a double portion thereof. In Revelation 11, we read of a returning witnessing of Jesus. Remember, the first time when Jesus was here, John had the spirit of Elijah, the first Elijah spirit one. He pointed to the Messiah, said that Jesus is the one. And in end time, a double portion comes, pointing to Jesus, witnessing him, having associations with the Elijah spirited one. There's a double portion that rested on one person called Elisha. And you're going to discover, as we progress through this video, because it is a deep prophecy that you are busy watching, may God open your eyes as you can see, and it's incredible. But both Elijah and Elisha were two prophets that were powerfully used by God. And often God not only speaks through the mouths in the written word that we now also have to read in the Bible, but he don't only speak through their mouths. Sometimes he speaks through life events of his prophets. And you can see that there are incidences of that in the Bible quite a lot. And here's an incident that happened between two prophets. Ask yourself, why on earth did Elisha ask for a double portion? And why call what came on him Elijah's spirit? Have you ever considered why? Because it is not a common thing in the Bible to read of a prophet that has the spirit of another prophet. But with Elijah, it is. There are two comings of the Elijah spirit. One portion, a double portion, and it points to the Messiah. And if you understand what it means, and we're going to get there towards the end of the video, you will understand why it is a double portion. It's incredible. And the sight that was shown to Elisha as a prerequisite ties with it. So each time before Jesus comes, the Elijah spirited one comes to point to him. The spirit of Elijah returned, and in end time Jesus returns. The spirit of Elijah returned in Elisha, having a double portion, and in end time, when Jesus is about to return, prior to that, we have a double portion testimony that is spoken in Revelation 11, at times using singular form as well. It's interesting to take note of that. Consider the prophecy that is shown in Elijah's life between two prophets that carried the spirit of Elijah in two separate comings, the one being there, the other one returning. John the Baptist had the first spirit of Elijah, and when Jesus returns, prior to that, a double one comes. Let's consider that as we move through the prophecy of what happened in the life events between Elijah and Elisha, because that is a prophecy. And before we go into that event, consider first an outlay of the two appearances of the Elijah spirited ones before Elijah's fulfillment was seen in John. Alright, so on the screen you can see Elijah and Elisha's names, and between them the mantle being passed over, because Elisha is witnessing an event, and that event is fully prophetic from beginning to end. We're going to speak about that and why you had to see it. The event is a prerequisite for that mantle, the covering of Elijah in the double portion to come on Elisha. But before we go to that event, what are we dealing with? We have literal Elijah of days of old. And that person had, well, the Elijah spirit, of course. And thus we have one Elijah spirit in one body. And then someone else returned having two Elijah spirit in one body, his name being Elisha. So the first appearance in the time of literal Elijah with the Elijah spirit was Elijah himself. And the second appearance of one with the Elijah spirit was Elisha, one person with a double portion, a couple of Elijah testimony spirit therein. We'll speak about that just now. Now let's look at the fulfillment thereof. We have now considered how it was in the days of old, which is prophetic. Now we're going to look at the fulfillment in John and the tie to Revelations. Now, by God's grace, we've already seen that there was one human being with Elijah's spirit, literal Elijah, and then another one came, one person with a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Thus, in the prophet Elijah's life was shown that Elijah's got two comings. Now we know that Jesus has two comings, right? We are waiting for his return. And interesting enough, the one with a double portion, Elijah's spirit, is the returning one. Now the first one has already been fulfilled. John the Baptist at Jesus' first coming had one Elijah spirit in him, the spirit of Elijah. He was the Elijah. So Elijah then points to Jesus, identifying him as the Messiah, which happened in John's lifetime. So we're already familiar, because Jesus identified John to have been that Elijah. So the first half is fulfilled of what you see on the screen. The first Elijah spirited one in the prophetic fulfillment now, just as was prophesied in literal Elijah's life, one person having that spirit was fulfilled in John. And he, at Jesus' first coming, identified him. Now the second half awaits. In other words, we are waiting for a 1 + 1, a double, a pair, a couple, witnessing prior to Jesus' return, as we read in Revelation 11. Thus, a double, a couple portion. They testify him, it is said in Revelations. They point to him thus, and there's a double load, just like was shown with Elisha. Interesting, the name of Elisha also ties with the meaning of Jesus' name, Yahushua, meaning that God saves. So, if you look at this, one can ask, what is it with Elijah and Elisha? If you merely look at their names, and now we're going to hear the Elijah testimony and why Elijah and that name for that prophet is the one that God chose to point to the Messiah. Because hidden in Elijah's name, there is the answer that identifies Jesus with God and also identifies what exactly, how redemption works and what happens so that God can give you and me life. And what is it with a double portion? Why was it sufficient that John the Baptist had one? All right, spirit of Elijah. Why must there be two in end time? We're going to get there. It is incredible, and it ties with what Elisha saw. So before we get there, hear the Elijah testimony. Why that name? Why Elijah? And why Elisha? And what does their unison, because they share the same spirit, what does that tell us? It is the Elijah testimony. God is witnessing not only in their life story, not only in things that happen to them, but he's also witnessing in the chosen name for them. Because Elijah, in the Hebrew, Eliyahu, we find Elijah's name means God is God. And it has two names of God in his name. Eli is the first name we hear in the Bible when we meet God, God the Creator. And what we hear of God there in the beginning in Genesis is that he has the might to turn things around. He's mighty strong. He can turn the darkness, which tie with death in Hebrew. He can turn the death, he can turn the darkness and bring life. And we read the creation account, everything that we can see. He did it by his word. There's an incredible prophecy that goes straight to the crucifixion therein. Genesis 1 is a prophecy. Second name given in Elijah, we find its name is the holy name of God in abbreviation. It speaks of God who gives life by his own breath. God is the breather outer of his breath to give life. we find that incredible event of the first life coming to human beings on earth. When the first person was created, he was lifeless until God, in the God who has got life, came and he breathed out his breath. That's the same prophecy that's in the burning bush. And all of this was fulfilled on the cross. Because remember, Elijah points to the Messiah. Jesus fulfilled the testimony in Elijah's name. Because when Jesus did what's spoken in God's name, understand that God's name testifies Jesus. Who is Jesus? Is one with God. It's incredible. Bear with it. May God grant perseverance in your heart, because it's magnificent. You still need to hear what Elisha saw. So it's incredible. I ask God to help you, to show it to you. When Jesus was on the cross, there was darkness. We read it was between 12 and 3 o'clock. There was darkness on the earth. Genesis 1 starts like that. It was dark. Darkness starts with death. While Jesus was busy dying, taking the death verdict for our sins, it was dark, yes. But it's Genesis 1's beginning. If you would have been standing by the cross and you saw that, you're in Genesis 1's fulfillment. It was dark. And then we read in Genesis 1 how God's Spirit was over the waters. Spirit ties with breath. In other words, in Hebrew, it's Spirit is breath. So it is God's breath that was shaking over, and water ties with wasting. So while there was darkness, in the middle of the darkness, while it was happening, God's breath shook in the darkness. And then, by his word, he turned it to light. He said, "Let there be light," and there was. Right? That's what we read of Eli. It's the first section of Elijah's name. Elijah points to who? To the Messiah. So, in fulfillment, on the cross, it was dark. And Jesus breathed out his breath. His breath, Spirit, shook in the darkness over the wasting, over the death, which he was busy taking. And when he breathed out, it was 3 o'clock. And when he breathed out, the time of the slaughtering of the lamb, the light came. Jesus is the Word of God. Can you see who is Jesus? He's one with God. So in the name of Eliyahu, we find God has the might to turn the darkness. He can turn the death by breathing out his breath. Jesus died. He breathed out his breath. And because he's got life, he's sinless. He's got life. He's got power over death. He rose. Jesus fulfilled the prophecy in Elijah's name. Elijah identifies the Messiah, spells out redemption, and then he shows you the oneness that Jesus has with God. God is true to himself, and he's true to his name. And the same way that he gave life in the very first place to mankind was by breathing out his breath. And that's how he gave life in heaven as well. He breathed out his breath and lived. And that's why the burning bush was green, where from Yahweh, the holy name of God, was spoken. That bush was the thorn bush. Jesus stood with a crown of thorns. He breathed out his breath, taking the wrath like fire in him. He breathed out and lived because he rose. And you see, it points to him. And Elisha's name that comes after Elijah, sharing the same spirit of Elijah, Elisha means that God saves, having Eli the might to turn the darkness. The prophecy of Elijah points to the fulfillment in the Messiah. So yes, he does. And when John had that spirit of Elijah, he identified Jesus at his first coming. But at that stage, Jesus was the Lamb that he identified. He identified him prior to Jesus taking the cross. So now there's something of that sight that we still need to look into by God's grace. Why did Elisha ask for a double portion of Elijah's spirit? Ever wondered about that? I used to, because it was a strange thing to me, and well, to all of us, because we know how strong that spirit of Elijah was and what great things God has done through his prophet Elijah. But there's a reason why Elisha did that. God wanted him to do that. And if he opens this to you, it is a prophecy unveiled that God has spared for us living today to know. So that's where we're going to go next time, and all glory to God for helping us to know. And there's even, it just keeps on coming, because there's such a lot of things that God has given in this revelation. The other is exactly who was with Elijah during that ascent. And why is that important? And we're going to speak about that next time, when a shocking discovery awaits you. If this has touched your heart and you want to make it accessible to others, please don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share links with others, because at the moment it is somewhat hard to gain access to the channel because of searching it on Google. It gives problems to some people. There's a monkey appearing saying it's unavailable, the channel, and it makes it hard for people, particularly new ones. So please join hands and make this visible. Maybe later it will come, right? So you must type in the handle at the Messiah Song straight into YouTube itself, not Google, but YouTube, and then you can gain access to this. Click on the playlist, and then you can search the Secrets of Songs, or if you want to hear the next in the triad on Elijah, you must search the Elijah triad, and you're going to see something awesome regarding the double portion of Elijah's spirit and the Twowitnesses of Revelations. See you soon. Don't forget to subscribe and like. It is necessary to make this visible. See you.